The ship was dying. Flames crawled through its broken hallways. Metal screamed as it twisted and tore apart. The cargo vessel Meridian's Hope spun slowly through the empty blackness of space, far from any help, far from any hope. Inside the wreckage, 23 crew members were already dead. The jump gate had failed. The explosion had ripped through the ship like a monster's claw. Bodies floated in the cold darkness. Screens flickered with warnings that no one could answer. But in a small storage room near the back of the ship, one heart still beat. Was 26 years old. He was not a soldier or a hero. He was just a cargo worker who loaded boxes and checklists. Now he lay trapped under a fallen beam, his legs crushed, his blood floating in red bubbles around him. The air was running out. The cold was creeping in. He knew he was going to die. He thought about his mother back on Earth. He thought about the ocean he had loved as a child. He thought about all the things he would never do, all the places he would never see. Tears floated from his eyes and drifted away into the darkness. Then he closed his eyes and waited for the end. Far away, on a small moon orbiting a giant purple planet, they were having an ordinary day. They were not like humans. They had 6 legs and 2 arms. Their bodies were covered in smooth shells that shimmered like pearls. Their faces had large, dark eyes and antennae that moved when they talked. They clicked and chittered to communicate, and they had lived on their quiet moons for thousands of years. They were peaceful. They had never built weapons. They had never fought wars. They grew food on their moons, raised their children, and lived simple lives. The rest of the galaxy mostly ignored them. They liked it that way. Elder was old, even by standards. Their shell had turned from pearl white to soft. Their movements were slow and careful, but their eyes were still sharp, and their mind was still quick. On this day was leading a harvesting ship through the asteroid fields near their moon, collecting minerals for building. That was when they saw the burning ship. The young crew members were frightened. They had heard stories about humans. The Galactic Council said humans were dangerous. They said humans were violent and unpredictable. They said wise species stayed far away from them. One young crew member clicked nervously. "Elder, we should leave. It is a human ship. They are dangerous." Santeni moved slowly as they studied the wreckage on their screen. Fire and smoke poured from holes in the hull. The ship was breaking apart piece by piece. "There may be survivors," said. "But Elder, they are humans. The Council warns against contact." Was quiet for a long moment. Then they spoke words that would change history. "If there are beings dying in that ship, it does not matter what species they are. It only matters that they need help. We will help them." The harvesting ship moved closer to the wreckage. The crew used their tractor beams to pull the broken human vessel into their cargo bay. The air smelled like smoke and death. They had never smelled anything so terrible. They searched the ship carefully. They found body after body. Humans floating in the cold, their eyes empty, their lives gone. The young crew members felt sick. Some of them had never seen death before. Then they found the storage room. Was barely alive. His skin was turning blue. His breathing was so shallow it was almost invisible. Blood had frozen in crystals on his wounds. His legs were destroyed under the heavy beam. They lifted the beam with their tools. They carried the human carefully to their medical bay. They looked at his broken body and did not know what to do. They had never treated a human before. They did not know how human bodies worked. They did not know what medicine to use. They did not know if their food would poison him or their air would kill him. But refused to give up. For 3 long months, they worked to save the human stranger. They studied human texts they found on the broken ship. They learned to read human words. They experimented carefully, trying different treatments, different medicines, different foods. Died twice. His heart stopped and they brought him back. They did not sleep. They did not rest. They worked and worked and worked to keep this stranger alive. Some of the other questioned them. Why spend so much effort on one human? Why risk bringing human diseases to their moons? Why waste resources on a stranger from a dangerous species? Answered the same way every time. Because it is right, because when someone is dying you help them, that is all. On the 93rd day, opened his eyes. He saw strange beings standing around him, 6-legged creatures with shimmering shells and dark, gentle eyes. His first instinct was fear. His heart beat fast. He tried to move, but his body was too weak. Then leaned close. Their antennae moved in a way that somehow seemed kind. They made clicking sounds, and a translation device turned them into words. "You are safe," said. "You are safe, we helped you." Stared at the old alien. He did not understand. Why would they help him? Humans, and had no treaties, they had no alliances, they had no reason to care about each other. "Why?" whispered. His voice was rough and broken from months of silence. "Why did you save me?" Santeni folded gently, the way of smiling. "Because you needed help," said simply. "That is enough reason." Lay in that medical bed and felt tears running down his face. He had been ready to die. He had accepted that the universe was cold and uncaring. And then these strangers, these beings who owed him nothing, had spent months fighting to save his life. He reached up with a shaking hand, reached down with a gentle claw, human and touched for the first time. "Thank you," whispered. "Thank you. I do not have words for what you have done, but I will not forget this. My people do not forget." Clicked softly. "We ask for nothing in return, it is simply what one does." But shook his head. "No, you do not understand. Humans remember. We always remember kindness. I will remember you. I will remember your people for the rest of my life." They did not fully understand what the human meant. They did not know the fire that burned in human hearts. They did not know that when humans loved someone, they loved them forever. They did not know that humans would cross galaxies to repay a debt. They simply smiled and helped the human heal. When was finally strong enough to travel, they gave him a small crystal. It was a marker of friendship, a beautiful gem that glowed with soft inner light. "So you will remember us," said. Held the crystal tight. "I do not need this to remember, but I will keep it forever." He climbed aboard a transport that would take him to human space. As the ship pulled away from the moon, looked back at the small figures watching him leave. He raised his hand in farewell. He did not know that he was making a promise that would echo across the stars. He only knew that something inside him had changed forever. And the crystal hung around his neck, glowing softly against his heart. Came home a different man. When his transport arrived at Earth Station 7, the doctors were amazed. They had received the report of the Meridian's Hope disaster. They had listed all 24 crew members as dead. When walked off the ship, alive and healing, they called it a miracle. But knew it was not a miracle, it was kindness. Simple, pure kindness from beings who owed him nothing. He told his story to anyone who would listen. In the hospital, he told the nurses about At the recovery center, he told the other patients. When reporters came to interview the sole survivor of the Meridian's Hope, he did not talk about his pain or his fear. He talked about the aliens who had saved him. "They spent 3 months learning how to keep me alive," he told the cameras. "They did not know anything about humans. They just knew I was dying and they refused to let me go." Some people listened with interest. Others nodded politely and forgot. Humans lived busy lives. There were wars to fight, money to make, problems to solve. A story about some strange aliens on a distant moon was interesting for a moment, then it faded away. But did not forget. He wore the crystal around his neck every single day. It hung against his chest, glowing softly, reminding him of the debt he owed. When people asked about it, he told them the story. When they stopped asking, he told them anyway. His legs healed slowly. They had done good work, but the damage had been severe. He walked with a limp for the rest of his life. Every step reminded him of how close he had come to death. Every step reminded him of the gentle beings who had pulled him back. Could not return to cargo work. His body was too broken for heavy lifting, so he went back to school. He studied navigation. He studied leadership. He studied military strategy. He had a new purpose now, a fire burning in his chest that would not go out. He joined the Terran Freight Union first. He worked his way up from assistant navigator to first officer. People noticed his dedication, his focus, his strange intensity. When they asked what drove him, he touched the crystal on his chest and smiled. "I have a debt to repay," he said. "Someday I will repay it." At 35, joined the Terran Defense Navy. It was a difficult transition. He was older than most new recruits. His body still carried the scars of his accident, but his mind was sharp and his determination was unbreakable. He rose through the ranks. Lieutenant, commander, captain. At each promotion ceremony, he wore his dress uniform with pride, and always the crystal hung around his neck. Some admirals thought it was strange, a naval officer wearing alien jewelry, but when they heard his story, they understood, or at least they thought they understood. At 42, Captain was given command of his own ship. It was a medium-sized cruiser, nothing special. But when they asked him what he wanted to name it, his answer surprised everyone. "The Kindness," he said. The naming committee frowned. Naval ships were supposed to have strong names, brave names, names of heroes and battles and victories. "Sir," one committee member said carefully, "that is an unusual choice, perhaps something more traditional." Looked at them with calm, steady eyes. "They saved my life. They asked for nothing. They taught me what true kindness means. I will honor them with this name, or I will not captain this ship." They gave him the name. The Kindness became famous in the fleet, not because of great battles or incredible victories, but because of its captain, ran his ship differently. He taught his crew about honor and loyalty. He told them stories about he made them understand that the universe was full of beings worth protecting, worth caring about. His crew loved him. They would follow him anywhere. Through all these years, sent messages to, most were simple notes, updates about his life. "I have been promoted," he would write. "I thought of you today when I saw a purple nebula. I hope the harvests are good." They were not communicative by nature. They did not understand human customs of constant contact. But sometimes, every few years, a response would arrive. "We are well," would write. "The moons are peaceful. We remember the human we saved. We are glad you are happy." These short messages meant everything, too. He printed them out and kept them in a box by his bed. When he felt lost or tired or forgotten, he would read them. He would hold the crystal and remember that somewhere in the universe, there were beings who had chosen kindness over fear. 20 years passed, then 22, then 24. Was 67 years old now. His hair had turned. His limp had gotten worse. The Navy had promoted him to admiral, given him a dreadnought to command and a fleet to lead. He was respected and honored throughout human space. But inside, he was the same young man who had woken up surrounded by clicking, gentle aliens. The debt still burned in his heart. The crystal still hung around his neck. During all these years, they stayed the same. They continued their quiet lives on their small moons. They grew their food. They raised their children. They watched the stars and lived in peace. The galaxy changed around them. Empires rose and fell. New species discovered space travel. Old species went extinct. Wars flared and faded. But the moons remained untouched, forgotten, ignored. Their anonymity was their protection. No one cared enough about them to attack them. No one thought they were worth conquering. They were just a small, peaceful species on worthless moons near a pretty planet. Elder grew old. Their shell turned from to almost white. Their movements became slow and careful. But they still led the council. They still made decisions for their people. They still remembered the human they had saved so many years ago. Sometimes, Young would ask about the crystal had given away. "Why did you help the human?" they would ask. "The council said humans were dangerous." Would answer the same way every time. "Because he was dying, because we could help. That is all the reason anyone needs." The young ones would nod, not fully understanding. They had never seen cruelty. They had never experienced violence. They did not know that the galaxy was full of beings who would kill for nothing, who would destroy without hesitation. They did not know that a shadow was moving toward them. Far across the galaxy, an empire was growing. The Dominion had been expanding for decades, conquering system after system. They cared nothing for peace or treaties. They wanted resources, territory, power. Their warships moved like hungry predators through the stars. And they were looking for their next target. On his dreadnought, Admiral stared out at the stars. He was thinking about, wondering how the old was doing. It had been months since the last message. He touched the crystal on his chest. "Stay safe, old friend," he whispered into the darkness. "Stay safe." He did not know that across the galaxy, the shadow had found the moons. He did not know that everything was about to change. He only knew that somewhere, somehow, he still had a debt to repay. And humans always paid their debts. The sky above the moons had always been peaceful. For thousands of years, they had looked up and seen only stars, only the beautiful purple swirls of their gas giant, only the soft glow of distant nebulae. Now the sky was filled with death. 47 warships hung in orbit. They were massive, ugly things covered in weapons and armor. Their hulls were painted black and red, the colors of the Dominion. Fighter craft swarmed around them like angry insects. They had never seen anything like this. They stood on their moons and stared upward with trembling antennae. Children hid behind their parents. Elders gathered in confused clusters. Everyone waited to see what would happen next. The Dominion had arrived. There were reptilian beings covered in thick scales and sharp spines. They walked on two legs and stood taller than most species. Their eyes were cold and yellow, and their mouths were full of pointed teeth. For 50 years, they had been conquering the galaxy piece by piece. They took what they wanted. They destroyed what they did not need. They had no mercy. They had no compassion. They had only hunger. Warlord commanded the invasion fleet. He was old for his scales from dozens of battles. He sat on his command throne and looked at the tiny moons on his screen with contempt. "What are these creatures?" he asked. His aide checked the records. Warlord, a pacifist species, no military, no weapons, no value except their location. This system has good mineral deposits. Made a clicking sound that passed for laughter. No weapons, no military, this will not even be fun. He opened a communication channel to the moons below. "Creatures of this system," his voice boomed across every receiver. "I am Warlord of the Dominion. Your moons now belong to us. You have one cycle to evacuate. After that, we will begin processing. Anyone who remains will be killed. This is not a negotiation. This is your only warning." The transmission ended. On the largest moon, the council gathered in emergency session. The council chamber was a beautiful place, with walls carved from moonstone and windows that looked out at the stars. Now it felt like a tomb. Elders sat in their chair, feeling every one of their many years. Their antennae drooped with exhaustion and fear. Around them, the other council members clicked and chittered in panic. "We must evacuate," one council member said. "We have no choice, we cannot fight." "Evacuate to where?" another asked. "We have no other home, we have nowhere to go." "Then we stay and die." "Perhaps we can negotiate, perhaps we can offer them something." Listen to the arguments without speaking. Their old eyes watched the younger debate and panic. They knew the truth that no one wanted to say aloud. They would not negotiate. They would not show mercy. They had nothing to offer and no way to fight. They were going to die, all of them, every adult, every child, every generation of their peaceful civilization. It was over. A young council member named spoke up. Their voice was shaking. "Elder, is there truly no one who can help us? In all the galaxy, is there no species who would stand with us?" Santeni moved slowly. "The Galactic Council will not intervene. They fear the other species have their own problems. We have no allies. We have no friends." Eyes were wet with tears. What about the human, the one from the stories, the one you saved so many years ago?" The council chamber went silent. Everyone looked at. Felt something stir in their old heart. A memory, a young human with tears in his eyes making a promise. "I will not forget, my people do not forget." But that had been so long ago, 24 years. The human was probably old now if he was even still alive. Humans were far away. They had no treaty with they had no obligation to help. Why would they come? Why would they risk their lives for a species they had never met? It was foolish, it was impossible. And yet, remembered the way the human had held the crystal, the fire in his eyes, the weight of his words. Humans remember, we always remember kindness. What if it was true? "There is a communication device," said slowly. "The human, he installed it years ago. He said it was for emergencies. He said if we ever needed help, we should use it." The council members stared. "You think the humans will come?" someone asked. Stood slowly from their chair. Their old legs trembled, but they stood tall. "I do not know, but we have nothing left to lose. We will send a message, and we will pray that someone is listening." They walked to the old communication console in the corner of the chamber. It had been silent for years, covered in dust. Wiped the dust away with a gentle claw. They activated the machine. A light blinked on. The console hummed with power. It was still working. Leaned close to the microphone. Their voice shook, but they spoke clearly. "This is of the, I do not know if anyone will hear this message. I do not know if anyone will care, but I must try." They paused, gathering their thoughts. "Long ago, we saved a human. He was dying and we helped him. We asked for nothing in return. We did what was right. Now the Dominion is here. They have 47 warships. We have nothing. We cannot fight. We cannot run. In one cycle, they will begin to destroy us." Tears ran from Soul's eyes. "If any remember us, if any care about us, If the human we saved is still alive and if he remembers his promise, please, please help us. We are about to die. We have no one else to call. Ended the transmission. The message flew into the void at the speed of light, racing across the galaxy toward human space. The council chamber was silent. "What do we do now?" asked. Looked up at the ceiling, toward the sky filled with enemy ships. "Now we wait," they said, "and we hope that the universe is kinder than it seems." Outside, the warships circled like vultures. Their countdown had begun. In one cycle, they would attack. They would burn the moons, strip them of resources, and leave nothing behind but ash. Warlord watched his screens with boredom. This conquest was too easy. There was no challenge, no excitement, just weak creatures waiting to die. He had no idea that a message was racing through space. He had no idea that somewhere, an old human admiral was about to receive the most important communication of his life. He had no idea that he had just made the worst mistake in history. Because they were not alone. They had never been alone. They had a friend who had waited 24 years to repay a debt. And that friend was about to answer. Admiral was sleeping when the message arrived. He was having the dream again, the same dream he had been having for 24 years. He was floating in darkness, his legs crushed, his blood freezing. He was dying. He was alone. And then gentle claws reached down and pulled him up into the light. He woke with a gasp. The crystal on his chest was warm. It had never done that before. A knock came at his cabin door. "Admiral, sir, we are receiving a priority transmission. It is marked for you personally." Sat up slowly. His old bones ached. His hair was messy from sleep, but his mind was already sharp, already alert. "Put it through to my personal screen." He walked to his desk and sat down. The screen flickered to life, and then he heard a voice he had not heard in years. "This is of the..." Listened to the message. He listened to every word. His hands began to shake, his eyes filled with tears. The crystal on his chest seemed to pulse with light. When the message ended, he sat in silence for a long moment. Old Gentle, the one who had refused to let him die, the one who had taught him what kindness truly meant. They were calling for help. They were about to be destroyed. And they did not know if anyone would come. Stood up, his legs trembled, but his voice was steady. "Bridge, this is the Admiral. Set a course for the system. Maximum speed." His first officer's voice came back, confused. "Sir, the system is outside our patrol zone. That course has not been authorized by High Command." "I am authorizing it," said. "Do it now." "Sir, yes, sir." The great dreadnought began to turn, but knew it was not enough. One ship against 47 warships. He would die before he even reached the moons. He needed more. He needed everyone. Sat down at his communication console. His fingers moved across the controls. He opened a channel, not to High Command, not to the Admiralty. He opened a channel to every human ship in the galaxy. Every freighter, every warship, every patrol boat, every private vessel, everyone. And then he spoke. "This is Admiral of the Terran Defense Navy. I am broadcasting on all channels because I need you to hear this. All of you." He paused, gathering his thoughts. 24 years ago, I was dying. My ship had been destroyed. My crew was dead. I was floating in the void, waiting for the end. And then a species called the found me. His voice cracked, but he kept going. They did not know me. They had been warned that humans were dangerous. They had every reason to leave me there, but they did not. They pulled me from the wreckage. They spent 3 months learning how to save my life. When my heart stopped, they brought me back. They asked for nothing in return. They simply said that when someone is dying, you help them. Touch the crystal on his chest. Now the Dominion is at their doorstep. 47 warships. They have no military, no weapons, no way to fight. They sent out a message asking if anyone remembered them, asking if anyone would help. He took a deep breath. "I remember them. I will always remember them. I am going to the system. I am going to stand between them and the... I am probably going to die, but I will not let them face this alone." His voice grew stronger. "I am not ordering anyone to follow me. This is not a military operation. This is personal, but if any of you have ever owed a debt, if any of you have ever been saved by a stranger, if any of you have ever believed that the universe should reward kindness instead of punishing it, I am asking you to come with me." He ended the transmission and sat back. For a long moment, nothing happened. His bridge crew stared at him in shock. His first officer opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again. Then the first response came. "Admiral, this is Captain of the cruiser Relentless. I heard your message. Humanity pays its debts. I am with you." Another voice. "This is Captain of the Lagos Rising. I am contacting the West African fleet. We ride together." More responses flooded in. "This is the freighter Mountain's Pride. We do not have weapons, but we have heavy armor. We can shield the smaller ships. We are coming." "This is retired Commander Santiago. I have an old patrol boat in storage. Give me 2 hours to get her flying. I will meet you at the jump point." "This is the mining vessel Deep Stone. We have drilling lasers. They were not designed for combat, but they will burn holes in hulls. Count us in." The messages kept coming, faster and faster, from every corner of human space. Military ships, cargo ships, private yachts, colony transports, a cruise liner whose captain announced he would ram the enemy if nothing else worked, a medical ship whose crew said they would treat the wounded, an old training vessel crewed entirely by cadets who wanted to prove themselves. On the bridge of his dreadnought, watched the responses pile up. Tears ran down his weathered face. His crew was crying too. His first officer pulled up a tactical display. "Sir, I am tracking the ships responding to your call. The number is—" "Sir, this cannot be right." "Show me." The display filled with dots, hundreds of dots, ships coming from everywhere, all converging on the same point. 312 ships confirmed, sir. More are still responding. Stared at the display, 312. Every human captain who had heard the call, every single one. They were all coming. He had thought he would go alone. He had thought he might find a few ships willing to follow him into death. Instead, he had found an armada. His first officer stepped closer. "Sir, High Command is demanding to know what is happening. They say this is unauthorized. They say this could cause a diplomatic incident with the—" Did not look away from the display. "Tell High Command that 300 human ships are about to save a species that once saved a human. Tell them they can court-martial me later. Right now, I have a debt to pay." The dreadnought reached the jump point. Around it, ships were gathering, big ships and small ships, new ships and old ships, military ships and civilian ships, all of them flying toward the same destination. Stood on his bridge and looked at the fleet assembled around him. These were not soldiers following orders. These were humans answering a call. Humans who believed that kindness should be rewarded. Humans who understood that some debts could never be forgotten. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral. They do not know we are coming. They think they are alone. They think the universe has forgotten them. We are about to show them how wrong they are. When we arrive, we fight together. We protect each other. And we show the what happens when they threaten a friend of humanity." He paused. "Jump on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." 312 ships jumped as one. Space tore open like a wound. And humanity poured through. Across the galaxy on a small moon, Elder sat in the darkness. They had given up hope. No response had come to their message. The countdown was almost over. Soon they would attack. Closed their eyes and thought about the human they had saved so long ago. They hoped he was alive somewhere. They hoped he was happy. They did not blame him for not coming. It had been a foolish hope. Then someone burst into the room. "Elder, Elder, the sky, look at the sky." Sold legs carried them outside. They looked up. And they saw the most beautiful sight of their long life. The sky was full of ships, human ships, hundreds of them pouring out of a tier in space, warships and freighters and vessels of every size, all of them flying toward the fleet, all of them broadcasting the same message. "They are under human protection. Withdraw or be destroyed." Fell to their knees. They had not been forgotten. The humans had come. Every single one. Warlord had conquered 11 star systems. He had crushed rebellions and burned worlds. He had never known fear. He had never known defeat. Now he stood on his bridge, staring at his tactical display, and he felt something cold crawling up his spine. 300 ships had just appeared in his system. 300 human ships. They were forming into battle lines. They were moving toward his fleet with terrible purpose. "Where did they come from?" he demanded. "The humans have no treaty with this species. They have no reason to be here." His tactical officer's voice was shaking. "Warlord, they are broadcasting a message. They say they are under their protection. They are demanding that we withdraw." Bared his teeth in anger. They did not withdraw. They did not run. He would not be humiliated by a pack of soft mammals. "They are bluffing," he growled. "They are trying to scare us. The humans would not die for these worthless insects. Order the fleet to attack." His officers hesitated. 300 ships was more than they had expected. The human vessels were spreading out, taking positions, preparing for battle. Now roared. The fleet moved forward, weapons powered up. Fighter craft launched in swarms. The space between the two fleets began to shrink. On the Bridge of the Kindness, Admiral watched the enemy approach. His heart was pounding. His hands were steady on the arms of his command chair. "All ships," he said calmly, "weapons free. Protect the moons at all costs. Do not let a single ship through." The battle began. The first volley from the human fleet was devastating. 3 capital ships were hit by concentrated fire from dozens of vessels. Their shields collapsed. Their hulls cracked open. Explosions lit up the darkness of space. Stared in disbelief. No one had ever hit his ships that hard. No one had ever fought with such fury. "Return fire," he screamed. "Destroy them all." The weapons blazed. Human ships took damage. Some of them were destroyed instantly. Others caught fire but kept fighting, pouring weapons fire at the enemy even as they died. The battle spread across the system. Ships danced and spun, firing and dodging. Explosions bloomed like flowers made of fire. The void filled with debris and screaming metal. Captain's cruiser took a direct hit to the engine. She was crippled, drifting toward a battleship. Instead of trying to escape, she ordered her crew to abandon ship. Then she stayed at the controls and rammed her vessel into the enemy's bridge. The battleship exploded, died with a smile on her face. The mining ship Deep Stone flew directly into a swarm of fighters. Its drilling lasers were not meant for combat, but they cut through fighter after fighter. The miners died when a destroyer finally caught them, but they took 24 fighters with them. Commander led her ship into the heart of the formation. She was hit again and again. Her shields failed. Her hull was burning. But she kept fighting, kept shooting, kept protecting the moons behind her. "This is for the," she shouted as her ship was torn apart. "This is for kindness." The battle raged for hours. The humans fought like demons. They fought like beings possessed. Every time a human ship was destroyed, 2 more pressed forward to take its place. Every time the thought they had won, another wave of attacks came. Had never seen anything like it. These humans were not fighting for territory. They were not fighting for resources. They were fighting for something he could not understand. Something beyond profit or power. They were fighting for a debt. "Warlord," his tactical officer said, voice trembling. "We have lost half our fleet. The humans are not stopping. They are not retreating. They keep coming." Looked at his display. 23 of his ships were gone. More were badly damaged. The human fleet had taken losses too, but they did not seem to care. They just kept attacking. "Order the retreat," said. The words tasted like poison in his mouth. "All ships fall back to the jump point." The fleet began to flee. Their formation broke apart. Ships that had been so confident hours ago now ran for their lives. The humans chased them, destroying stragglers, making sure they knew never to come back. His flagship was the last to leave. As it jumped away, he looked back at the system he had planned to conquer. It was full of human ships. Ships that had come from across the galaxy to protect a species of gentle, peaceful aliens. He did not understand it. He would never understand it. Humans were insane. When the last ship disappeared, a cheer rose up from the human fleet. It echoed from ship to ship, from crew to crew. They had won. Against all odds, against a superior enemy, they had won. But the victory had come at a cost. 31 human ships had been destroyed. Over 2,000 humans were dead. Their wreckage floated among the debris of the fleet, mixing together in the cold emptiness of space. Admiral stood on his bridge and felt tears running down his face. So many lives. So many brave people who had answered his call and given everything they had. "Sir," his first officer said softly, "we are receiving a transmission from the surface. It is the Elder." Took a deep breath, put it through. The screen flickered, and there was. They looked so old now, so fragile. Their shell was white with age, their antennae drooped with exhaustion, but their eyes were bright with tears. said. Their voice was barely a whisper. You came, after all these years, you came. Touched the crystal on his chest. I told you, humans do not forget, we remember kindness, we always remember. Santeni trembled. But why? Why did so many come? We are nothing, we have nothing to offer, we are just a small, weak species on worthless moons. Why would you die for us? Smiled, it was a tired smile, a sad smile, but it was full of warmth. Because 24 years ago you taught me something important. You taught me that kindness does not need a reason. You did not ask what I could give you. You only asked what I needed. You saved my life simply because it was right. He leaned forward. The universe is cold. It is full of beings like the who take and destroy and care nothing for others. But it does not have to be that way. You showed me that. You showed me that there is another path, and I spent my whole life waiting for the chance to show you that I learned the lesson. He paused. You are not nothing, you are family now, and humans protect their family. Broke down, the old wept openly, making soft, clicking sounds that needed no translation. Around them, other were crying too. For the first time in their history, they knew what it felt like to be protected, to be valued, to be loved by beings from another world. Thank you, said through their tears. Thank you, I do not have words. You do not need words, said. You never needed words. Your actions spoke for you 24 years ago. Now let our actions speak for us. The human fleet took up positions around the moons. Medical ships descended to help with the wounded. Engineers began planning how to build a permanent defense station. Captains who had been strangers hours ago now talked like old friends, united by what they had done together. The Galactic Council watched in stunned silence. They had expected the humans to stay out of it. They had expected them to die quietly. Instead, they had witnessed something that would change history. The news spread across the galaxy, the story of a species that had saved one human and the hundreds of ships that had come to repay the debt. Other species began to talk, to wonder, to think about what it meant. If the humans would do this for what else would they do? Who else would they protect? What kind of beings were these humans who crossed the galaxy to repay a kindness? The Dominion never recovered. Their defeat at the moons sparked rebellions across their empire. Within 10 years, they had collapsed. Species that had been too afraid to fight back saw what the humans had done and found their own courage. They remained pacifists. They still did not build weapons. They still did not fight wars, but they were never alone again. A permanent human garrison was established in their system. Human children learned about in school. Every year on the anniversary of the battle, human ships would jump into the system, not to fight, but to celebrate. Elder lived for 12 more years. When they finally passed, Admiral traveled to the moons one last time. He was very old now, walking with a cane, his hair pure white. He stood at its memorial with a crowd around him. He took the crystal from his neck, the one he had worn for almost 40 years, and placed it gently on the stone. Then he spoke. In the void you found a stranger. You did not ask what he could give. You only asked what he needed. And because of that, a galaxy learned what it means to be human. He looked up at the sky full of stars. We remember, he said. We always remember. 2 years later, died peacefully in his sleep. He was buried on Earth with full military honors. On his gravestone, they carved the words he had asked for. He never forgot a kindness. But the story did not end there. It became legend. It was told around fires and in schools and in the halls of power. It became the standard by which humanity measured itself. When humans met new species, they told the story of they said, this is who we are. This is what we do. Show us kindness and we will remember it forever. Threaten our friends and you will face every ship we have. And across the galaxy, species learned a simple truth. If you ever needed proof that the universe could be kind, you only needed to look at the moons. Because once, a small, gentle species saved a dying human. And when they needed help, every Terran captain answered. Every single one.